You know, that moment when someone finally spills the truth you've been waiting for.
Yeah.
We're at that point right now. Maddie Brown, yes, Maddie Brown has finally broken her silence. And it is explosive. This isn't a little family drama or some small misunderstanding swept under the carpet. No, this is the type of confrontation that rattles to the core of a whole family. The sort that makes one lean in, gasp, and then double-check one's reality. Maddie is not holding back anything. She is not walking on eggshells around emotions or softening realities. She is coming for Robyn, shouting out deceptions that have been hung in the air for years and exposing everyone to exactly what has been happening behind the cameras, behind the smiles, and behind the glossy reality television veneer. And let's just get this one thing straight. You can feel tension emanating from this situation. It is not subtle. Maddie isn't merely disappointed or mildly irritated. No, she is done, emotionally, spiritually, cosmically done. She is calm before the storm, but make no mistake. The storm is coming. So what did Maddie say? What did she reveal? And more importantly, why is Robyn suddenly looking like she's on thin ice in front of millions of viewers? That's what we're unpacking today. And trust me, you're going to want to grab a seat because this is about to get intense. Let's start from the beginning because context is everything. Maddie has spent years quietly navigating the chaos of this polygamous family. She's grown, she's raised her children, and she's tried to stay out of the drama. But when Robyn's behavior ran across lines that no longer could be overlooked, Maddie made a decision. A decision to tell the truth and defend herself and her family from deception, manipulation, and betrayal. Some of you may be thinking, why now? Why, after all these years, does Maddie decide to come forward? Well, here is the thing. The trend has been ongoing. It is not one gaffe or a misstep. It is decades of behavior that Maddie has seen, learned, and now won't let keep going without a say. And she is taking this moment, this platform, to ensure everyone is clear on what is happening, because the truth doesn't wait, and neither does Maddie. And honestly, good for her. Because, let's be honest, Robyn has had the mic for way too long, spinning tales, projecting herself as perfect, and managing the optics of this family. Maddie. She is here to blow that facade to smithereens, one bombshell at a time, and we're going to dissect every last detail, every subtle nuance, every public pronouncement that unravels just how far-reaching this tension is. Oh, so are you ready? Because what follows is not an easy summary. This is commentary, reaction, and yes, a little roasting too, because Robyn's lies aren't just factual errors, they're emotional sabotage, and someone needs to call it out. Here is the kicker. Maddie isn't doing this for herself. She is doing it for her children, for her own peace of mind, and for the integrity of her truth. And when somebody actually gets up in public and holds a family accountable for this, it is a big deal. We're talking waves you can feel throughout the world of reality television. So let's just stop here for a minute and really take this in. Maddie is being very clear. She is over manipulations, over lies, and over letting anyone rewrite her narrative. Robyn, prepare yourself. Because this confrontation is more than a discussion. It is an expose. Now, let's dig in. Let's break down specifically what Maddie revealed, how she laid out the deception, and what this does to the family dynamic from here on out. We're going to dissect the words, the undertones, and why this might very well change everything you thought you knew about this family. Okay, guys, let's dive into the nitty-gritty. Maddie didn't merely make a cryptic remark or delicately allude to conflict. No, she went all the way. Her initial public confession was regarding Robyn's track record of distorting facts, narrative control, and posing as the perfect peacekeeper while discreetly manipulating circumstances behind the scenes. And seriously, the timing couldn't have been worse. Maddie's post fell like a bombshell within the family situation, and you could almost hear the collective jaw drop of the viewers. There is this brutal candor here that is hypnotic. You simply can't help but keep looking. So, what did Maddie share initially? She spoke to the endless distortion of reality, the manner in which Robyn would selectively tell stories in an effort to portray herself as virtuous and simultaneously discount or shame Maddie's reality. Maddie emphasized that this manipulation wasn't covert, it was systematic. All the details, all the comments, all the reactions Robyn shared on camera or on social media served a purpose: to control, to dictate the family story, and to present herself as infallible. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Wait, isn't this just typical reality television drama? Sure, on the surface, it appears to be a typical drama. But when you scratch beneath the surface, when you examine the trends over the years, this is about power, control, and truth. Not simply about who said what on a television show. Maddie's disclosures pull back the curtain, and suddenly, all that you believed was private and polished is exposed. And here is the thing. The audience is responding. People are infuriated, shocked, and truly, some of them are vindicated. Because anyone who has paid attention to this family in particular can feel the tension, the gaslighting, the selective narrative. Maddie's tell-all isn't merely a personal realization. It is confirmation for anyone who has ever been manipulated or belittled by someone with authority. But let's not only discuss the emotional damage. Maddie also became strategic. She employed examples, particular instances, and outright statements that left Robyn with very little room to maneuver. This isn't emotional ranting. This is deliberate truth-telling. Maddie made it abundantly clear she is not here to debate, negotiate, or couch things in sugar-coated terms. She is here to tell it like it is and to make sure her story, her reality is heard and respected. And trust me, it is riveting to watch. You can feel the power pulsing through your screen. Maddie's bravery is tangible, and it is one of those times that you are thinking, finally someone said it. But we're not finished, because although Maddie's statements are compelling, the responses from fans, loved ones, and the general public are equally telling. Individuals are polarizing, dissecting each word, each subtlety, and each tweet. Some are rooting for Maddie, some are amazed at the audacity, and some are wondering just how far-reaching the deception goes. Here is the truth. This is not an isolated event. Maddie's confession is a glimpse into years of complex relationships, deliberately staged misrepresentations, and seething family hostilities. And what makes this so engrossing, what makes it ready to go viral, is that we can feel the stakes, the emotional investment, and the courage it takes to call someone like Robyn out in public. So, if you assumed this was simply a family disagreement, don't. This is a calculated, emotionally fraught face-off, and Maddie is the one calling the shots. She is establishing that this is her tale, her account, and she is not going to let anyone, including Robyn, re-engineer it. All right, men, get ready. This is where it gets incredibly dramatic. Maddie didn't simply suggest Robyn's falsehoods. She enumerated them one by one, and the implications are devastating. These are not little fibs or innocent exaggerations. These are lies that had established the public's image of the family for years. Lies that had impacted relationships, trust, and even the emotional stability of the children. The first bomb Maddie dropped was Robyn's selective storytelling. Maddie criticized the way Robyn would manipulate stories in order to look good, usually at Maddie's expense. Maddie described how things were staged on the show compared to what really went on behind doors. And let me tell you, this gap is enormous. Fans are reading her words, and the response is shock and incredulity. You can already feel the tension brewing. Next, Maddie revealed manipulation of family stories. From what she said, Robyn had a habit of dictating the way family members behaved was shared with the public. This implication was that anyone who didn't adhere to Robyn's version of events was presented negatively. Maddie was explicit. This was not merely dramatic editing for television. No, this was intentional, a means of exerting power, influence, and control over narrative. Now let's discuss the effects on Maddie and the children. She did not pull her punches here either. Maddie explained the psychological cost of having grown up in a culture where facts were manipulated and reality was subverted. She underscored that this manipulation model wasn't merely in the way. It was hurtful. She described the anxiety, disorientation, and exasperation that came with living in a home where an individual's account of what happened was always dictated as reality. And here is the surprise. Maddie's disclosures extend past Robyn's public image. She also spoke to how these deceptions impacted family choices, parental relationships, and sibling relationships. The lies caused undue tension, bred resentment, and made trust among family members impossible, according to Maddie. In essence, Robyn's manipulation of reality wasn't merely for appearance's sake, it had lasting, tangible effects. Now, I need to stop here and mention the audience reaction. Social media erupted the minute Maddie's words were released. Fans are analyzing every sentence, every word, and every innuendo charge. Some are hailing Maddie for courage. Some are amazed at the cheek of the revelation, and some are going back to previous episodes to determine if they finally get the complete picture. Now the truth is, folks, Maddie isn't complaining. She is choosing what to reveal, when to reveal it, and how to release it. This is strategically revealing. Maddie understands that timing is everything, that detail counts, and that context is key. She is not doing this to humiliate anybody for the sake of melodrama. She is standing up for integrity, for honesty, and for accountability. Now we come to the part that makes your jaw drop. Maddie presented examples where Robyn's deceptions directly conflicted with recorded events, discussions, and even sworn testimony from other members of the family. These are not loose, he said, she said affairs. These are specific illustrations demonstrating a pattern of intentional dishonesty. Maddie is essentially saying, I've had enough of the rewriting. The truth is mine to tell now. You can almost feel the power shift here. Maddie isn't asking for permission. She isn't negotiating. She's staking her claim on reality, and Robyn's lies are crumbling in real time. This is the point where the audience gets it. The family situation as we understood it is basically overhauled. And just to get it perfectly clear, this isn't catty drama. This is control, boundaries, and responsibility. Maddie is claiming agency over her narrative, taking charge of her voice, and ensuring the world knows what has actually been going on. And the family, well, they're watching, some likely nervously, others likely frustrated, because this confrontation isn't just public, it is transformational. Okay, this is where the fire raises to the next level. Maddie didn't just expose lies from afar, she met them face to face, and the manner in which she did it is pure fire. You can sense her intensity in each sentence, each post, each story she posted. This is not subtle shading or a quiet dissent. This is a full-on call-out moment that nobody expected. So what did Maddie do first? She called out Robyn's part in scripting the family narrative. She called attention, very publicly, to how Robyn scripted conversations, held back information, and constructed events to preserve her reputation at the expense of Maddie's voice. And here is the twist. Maddie did not just say facts. She presented the narrative in such a manner that it became impossible to overlook. All the viewers could sense the gravity of truth behind her statements. One of the most gripping moments in this confrontation was when Maddie accused specific incidents where Robyn's deceptions directly affected the family. She didn't leave anything implied. She enumerated timelines, mentioned talks, and even pointed to patterns no viewer who wasn't keen would ever have picked up on. It is like she held a magnifying glass to decades of dishonesty and held it up for all to examine. Now, let's discuss tone, since Maddie's tone is essential here. She wasn't shrieking, she wasn't melodramatic, but each word had power and belief behind them. It is the sort of measured, rock-like energy that makes people sit up and listen. You sense the frustration, the disappointment, but also the power of a person who has had enough of being gaslit anymore, and the audience response. It was electric. Social media went wild. Fans were quick to begin dissecting Robyn's previous statements, contrasting them with Maddie's revelations and pointing out inconsistencies they hadn't previously noticed. Responses flooded in containing words to the effect of, "Finally, someone said it." And this changes everything we thought about their family dynamic. It is that sort of energy that makes a typical reality television show a cultural phenomenon. However, here is the thing. Maddie didn't just stop at exposing deceit. She also established boundaries, something that gets lost in these types of confrontations. She made it very clear that this wasn't all about airing grievances. She is done being manipulated. She is done being controlled. She is setting boundaries around herself and her kids. And that boundary, it is clear, and it is in public. One especially fiery confrontation occurred when Maddie called out the emotional manipulation strategies that had been employed for years. She named guilt, tripping, selective sharing, and emotional coercion that made family members feel forced to do what they wanted them to do. Maddie didn't define it, she revealed it, in such a way that no one could deny it. And believe me, this is the section that had people leaning forward, nodding their heads in agreement, and quite frankly, a little shocked at the brazenness of it all. Now, let's get real. Tension was palpable even coming through the television. Maddie's guts for standing up to these things out in the open are unbelievable. This is not a moment of catty drama. This is a moment of taking power back, of taking truth over decades of manipulation. And each and every statement she makes is dripping with intent to teach, to reveal, and to safeguard. And the sneak peek, although Maddie's showdowns are already incendiary, we haven't even gotten to the most dramatic yet. the parts that will have viewers doubting everything they ever believed about this family. Those to come in the next installment. And yes, you're going to want to pay close attention because this is where the emotional stakes skyrocket. All right, now let's dive into the aftermath, the reaction from fans, viewers, and the social media universe. Because here's the truth. Maddie's expose didn't just ruffle feathers. It set off a wildfire. As soon as Maddie's posts went live, the responses came flooding in. Fans quickly caught on to the brashness of her comments. Posts and tweets flooded in, screenshots were shared, and hashtags trended within seconds. You could see it play out live, people dissecting each word, each subtlety, and arguing over what lies were the most unbelievable. The initial reaction: shock. Fans couldn't get over someone finally having the nerve to publicly call out Robyn. "Finally, the truth comes out," tweeted one. "This changes everything we thought about their family," another wrote. It wasn't just random viewers either. Superfans who've been following every episode began watching reruns of previous clips, searching for trends, and linking Maddie's discoveries to earlier incidents. Then came the vindication wave. Individuals who had long suspected manipulation began to feel justified. Responses such as, "I knew something didn't feel right," and "Maddie just validated everything we've been noticing all this time," began to accumulate. You could sense the shared exhale of relief. Fans finally had a platform to match their intuition. And it didn't end there. Some responses were all about tears. Fans posted personal anecdotes about family manipulation, unhealthy dynamics, and having the guts to talk. Maddie's candor encouraged many individuals to examine their own lives, establish boundaries, and tell their truths. That is the kind of ripple effect that makes those moments go viral. Naturally, there were critics and skeptics. Some wondered about Maddie's timing or motives, arguing whether this was a publicity stunt or an honest effort to set the record straight. But here is the thing, the public's response was overwhelmingly on her side. Folks saw the courage, the strategy, and the simplicity of her story. And let's discuss engagement now. Fans didn't merely comment, they engaged with the content, making memes, reaction videos, and discussion forums that went wild on platforms. All the clips Maddie shared or reacted to were picked apart, replayed, and analyzed. This is the type of viral energy that takes a story from a reality show subplot and turns it into a full-blown cultural force. But here is the important thing to know. Maddie's social media tempest is not just white noise. It is evidence of effect. The public response makes clear exactly how much weight her words are worth, how much currency her truth is, and how effective it is to call out lies in a very public manner. She is not only revealing deception, she is rewriting the story and re-inking the family's history in real time. And for real, the responses are just going to get more dramatic because we're dismantling the next level. How the members of the family themselves react, how the deceptions are falling apart behind closed doors, and what this does to the future of the Brown family. Because when Maddie's truth collides with long-buried secrets, things are going to get ugly. All right, now we're stepping behind the curtain. Maddie's public revelations didn't just shake up social media, they sent shockwaves through the family itself. And trust me, this is where things get even more intense, because the private fallout is just as explosive as the public spectacle. So how did Robyn respond? Unlike Maddie, she didn't go full-on public, at least not initially. Behind the scenes, Robyn apparently attempted to control the situation, dismiss Maddie's allegations, and protect the family's story. But here lies the twist. Maddie's claims were so detailed, so concrete, that they could not be spun or glossed over. Each deception revealed was another chip in the meticulously crafted facade Robyn had years to construct. Sources report there was tension in family communications as soon as the posts went live. Texts were read and reread, veiled comments were made, and family members were placed in the middle, not knowing how to manage the shock of transparency. Maddie's brazenness pushed everyone to face truths they had either avoided or silently tolerated. And this is where it becomes psychologically interesting. Robyn, who lives on managing perception, suddenly found herself responding to someone else's story. Maddie's story. For years, Robyn had dictated what the world and the family saw, but now she was on the defensive. And as we've seen before, when someone like Robyn is put on the defensive, the reactions can be unpredictable, emotional, and frankly, dramatic. One insider described the tension as palpable. Meetings and conversations that used to be calm and controlled now carried an undercurrent of unease. Maddie's insistence on honesty upended the equilibrium of power. Suddenly, the complacent fiction of harmony was shattered. Each member of the family had to choose, stand with Maddie, stand with Robyn, or dance carefully in the middle, and the kids. This was just as awakening for them. Maddie's bravery offered a template, a blueprint for accepting truth, establishing boundaries, and speaking out. It was liberating, but also emotionally burdensome. Seeing lies publicly revealed in your own household isn't only soap opera, it is intimate. Maddie's behavior demonstrated that someone has to be held accountable, even when it is awkward or inconvenient for the power holders. Now, let's discuss the ripple effect. Robyn couldn't merely turn a blind eye to the postings. Every interaction, every choice, every public outing was now scrutinized through Maddie's filter. Fans and the media were already analyzing clips, contrasting statements, and filling in blanks of inconsistency. So Robyn's public and private life were both under scrutiny at the same time, something she'd never experienced before. But here is the crux of it. Maddie isn't out to wreck Robyn. She is pushing for honesty, accountability, and acknowledgement of years of manipulation, and the aftermath reveals how powerfully truth can work. Through standing up, Maddie not only empowers herself, but also exposes the cracks in the family's previously unshakable image. And although Robyn might attempt to justify herself, the truth that Maddie has laid out is relentless, undeniable, and life-changing. It alters the family dynamic, shifts the narrative, and sends a message to everyone, within and beyond the family, that the time of unquestioned authority is now over. Maddie has said it out. This is about boundaries, integrity, and clarity, and nothing less than honesty will restore the balance. Okay, now it gets really exciting. Maddie didn't just tell her truth on social media, she confronted Robyn in real-life situations, and those interactions were pure fireworks. These encounters weren't rehearsed, they weren't scripted, they were raw, emotional, and impossible to miss. The initial big public confrontation occurred during a taping that fans had been watching closely. Maddie's stance, tone, and words were unmistakable. She was finished with being manipulated. Robyn, however, attempted to keep cool, trying to be calm and in control. But here is the reality. Maddie's language was a beacon to all the inconsistencies, half-truths, and outright lies which had been circulating for years. Fans wrote of witnessing these exchanges as jaw-dropping. Maddie didn't sit idly by. She called out behaviors directly, pointed out specific examples of dishonesty, and refused to let Robyn weasel out. It is the sort of confrontation which causes viewers to lean forward, rewind, and pontificate endlessly online. Each word, each hesitation, each response was analyzed. And rightly so. Next came the fiery debate on the children and family story. Maddie did not merely speak of herself. She spoke for the younger members of the family, those who had been around to see selective account giving. She questioned Robyn on the way stories were being displayed on camera, the way actions were being set up, and the way loyalty was being quantified. And here's the thing, Maddie's even keel but unshakable delivery made it impossible to ignore. This wasn't emotive ranting. This was deliberate laying bare of long-term trends. One of the most charged moments came when Maddie rebuked Robyn for trying to alter what had happened in the past in interviews and on social media. Maddie didn't ever get loud, didn't yell. She just laid down the facts, supported by specifics, and let them do the talking. And the viewers could sense the gravity of this. The quiet, the tension, the nuanced responses, all cried out, truth is hitting. Let's discuss the ripple effect on audiences. Footage of these showdowns went viral. Fans were dissecting every line, every look, every expression. Reaction videos, discussion forums, and debates went nuts across the board. People were opining who was right, who was bending the truth, and more importantly, who finally had the courage to own their story. All right, now we're entering the zone where Maddie isn't just confronting lies. She's systematically dismantling Robyn's carefully curated public image. This is truth telling on another level, and the stakes emotionally couldn't be higher. Maddie's plan is evident. She is not just responding emotionally, she is creating a narrative that reveals deceit while preserving herself and her kids. Each posting, each public statement, each clip is calculated. Maddie has knowledge of the power of words and applies them to change perception. Not only for viewers, but for relatives who've been tricked for decades. Firstly, she addressed habits of manipulation Robyn has leaned on for decades. Maddie pointed out how Robyn framed herself as the voice of reason, peacemaker, or moral compass. But in actuality, says Maddie, it was more about control, image control, and self-protection. And she did it with precision. Everything that Maddie said was supported with examples, with little room for deniability. Then, Maddie targeted the disconnect between Robyn's public image and private behavior. For years, audiences have known Robyn as poised, collected, and supportive. The family matriarch holding the clan together. Maddie stripped away that FAA day, revealing how selective reporting and fact omission spun a bogus story. And here is the most staggering aspect. The public could see just how long these habits had been established, and how deeply they hurt the family. Now, let's speak of emotional stakes, because this is not merely about image, it is about actual repercussions for actual human beings. Maddie showed how the deceptions influenced the kids' relationships, the sibling relationships, and even how family members perceived themselves. She made it unequivocal: lying isn't innocuous, it creates ripple effects that echo over years. And here is the dramatic twist. Maddie framed her revelations with moments of vulnerability. She acknowledged the psychological cost, the heartache, and the agony of watching someone distort reality while being quiet for so long. That vulnerability is not weakness, it is credibility and relatability, and it hit home with viewers. Big time. Now, let's take apart how the audience reacted. Social media went crazy. Frames of Maddie's exacting recitations, paired with her soothing yet commanding tone, went viral. Fans were breaking down, discussing, and having a throwback conversation with previous episodes. Comment chains were abuzz with posts such as, "This makes so much sense," and "I cannot believe she finally spoke up loud enough." Maddie's tactical deconstruction didn't only reveal Robyn. It gave viewers the clarity they'd been waiting for decades. Westlake emphasized a key message: at last, truth and boundaries are more important than approbation or reconciliation. She demonstrated that her first concern is keeping her children safe and taking back her story. And by dismantling Robyn's public image, Maddie isn't just defending herself, she's signaling a new era for the family, where honesty and accountability take precedence over manipulation and perception management. This is the moment where viewers realize Maddie isn't just reacting, she's leading. She is leading the family, and the viewers to a world where honesty prevails and the emotional price of lies is completely realized. But the twist here. Maddie's public confrontations were not only about exposing falsehoods, they were about setting limits. She told Robyn, the media, and the family loud and clear manipulation and lying are no longer acceptable. And by doing this in public, she ensured accountability isn't just internal, it's visible. And let's be real, the intensity of these moments is part of why this story is so captivating. Maddie's courage combined with Robyn's attempts to maintain control created a dynamic that is impossible to turn away from. Each pause, every fleeting adjustment, every moment of hesitation is filled with emotional significance. At last, the audience has a definite takeaway. Maddie's not here to mess around. She is here to take back the story, defend her truth, and illustrate that honesty, even when faced with authority and manipulation, has power. Let's get into the core of family drama now, and this is where things really get complicated. Maddie's bombshells didn't simply upend Robyn's reputation, they rocked the sibling relationships. Brothers and sisters who had been quietly watching or clandestinely surviving decades of manipulation were suddenly compelled to take sides, re-examine loyalties, and face their own histories. So how did the siblings respond? Well, predictably, there was a range. Some instantly sided with Maddie, relishing relief that someone had finally told the truth. These siblings felt heard, understood, and finally permitted to express frustration they'd been carrying around for years. Their advocacy was powerful, vocal, and irrefutable, and it produced a public perception pivot that further solidified Maddie's position. There were also those who were ambivalent, wary of speaking up or maybe jeopardizing the delicate family equilibrium. Maddie's courage, though, served as a catalyst. Her candor gave them leave to accept what they had sensed all along: manipulation, selective testimony, and emotional coercion had dominated their childhood. And gradually, but inevitably, those who had remained silent came forward, adding depth to the developing narrative. Now, don't forget the emotional cost. Some siblings were faced with painful recollections, moments in which Robyn's deceptions had personally affected their sense of self, their relationships with one another, and even their public perception. Maddie's confessions compelled the family to confront these moments in a very real, very immediate manner. And the tension absolutely palpable. Discussions that were previously light or superficial were now freighted with history, responsibility, and unvarnished emotion. Maddie wasn't afraid to call out patterns of manipulation, favoritism, and selective storytelling that had dominated their lives. In doing so, she made it impossible not to recognize the emotional stakes of what was happening. Here is where the storytelling really begins to soar. Maddie was strategic and empathetic in her approach. She wasn't revealing lies for its own sake. She was leading her siblings to a place of understanding and empowerment. Every example she provided, every word she spoke, bore the unstated message. We can take back our story together, but only if we accept what is real first. And the reaction of the audience, volcanic. Fans were glued to the developing sibling dynamics, to the tension, the camaraderie, and the occasional conflicts. Comment sections flared with fan theories, gossip about behind-the-scenes talks, and forecasts on how the family would develop going forward. Folks weren't merely witnessing a reality television moment, they were watching generational reckoning live. Lastly, let's observe the shift in power. Maddie's bravery didn't merely reveal lies, it altered the family hierarchy internally. Where silence and obedience previously governed relationships, truth and responsibility now come first. Siblings who perhaps felt helpless or complicit are now speaking out, empowered by Maddie's leadership and example. Now, let's shift our gears and examine the public fallout beyond the family. Maddie's bombshell didn't remain on social media or among family members alone. The media, gossip blogs, and reality show commentators had it covered like a wildfire. As soon as Maddie's words went live, headlines began to appear. Maddie Brown denounces Robyn, or family secrets revealed in surprise revelation. Videos were posted on news clips, YouTube summaries, and TikTok reactions, all analyzing the drama. Suddenly, the private family strain was a cultural conversation. Media outlets played up the difference between public image and private life. Robyn had spent years being portrayed as the solid matriarch, the calm eye of the Brown family hurricane. Maddie's tweets disrupted that narrative, revealing a side of the family that had not been seen on the show. Complicated, messy, and cringingly human. The media attention wasn't just concentrated on Maddie's accusations. It explored patterns, drew parallels with previous incidents, and hypothesized about family relations. Adoring fans reacted with vehemence. Hashtags such as #Maddie exposes, #Brown family drama, and #truth over control trended on social media. People posted screenshots, created timelines of events, and argued about every statement Maddie made. On comment boards and message forums, audience members took apart the subtleties of what Robyn said, juxtaposing those with Maddie's explanations and examining the believability of both. And here is the twist. The media storm escalated the emotional investment for the family. Robyn and Kody could no longer just control the image behind the scenes. Everything they said, posted on social media, and appeared in was scrutinized. Maddie had successfully changed the story from scripted PR to raw reality, and the public image of the family had to react. Now the best part, Maddie's plan didn't only out Robyn, but also brought accountability on a very rare level for reality television. By making it public, Maddie saw to it that falsehoods, manipulation, and biased storytelling could no longer be quietly swept under the rug. Viewers, media, and even ordinary fans were now eyewitnesses to a family reckoning. And the response from the audience purely electric. People cheered for Maddie's bravery, debated the consequences for the kids, and speculated about long-term effects. The narrative wasn't entertainment anymore. It was a case study in family relationships, honesty, and boundaries. Now that the cat was out of the bag, Maddie's public outing of Robyn's fibs made for a game-changer in the power dynamic. Robyn's grip on the family story relaxed, and Maddie's credibility and authority rose. This was not simply about scandal. It was about regaining voice, agency, and integrity. And for viewers at home, this was one of those magical moments when reality television was not only dramatic, but also meaningful. Okay, now let's discuss Kody, because no family soap of this size would be complete without him. Robyn didn't just get rattled by Maddie's expose. It hit at the center of Kody's tightly controlled power. And as would be expected, his response is as revealing as it is melodramatic. To start, Kody tried the old standby. Damage control statements were crafted with care, efforts at public explanation were attempted, and social media updates attempted to spin events so as not to minimize Maddie's revelations. But this is the thing. Maddie had already created an airtight narrative of truth. Every attempt he made at spinning a lie was met with fan scrutiny, side-by-side comparison, and irrefutable contradictions. Kody's PR approach soon became moot within the family. Kody's agitation was palpable. Reportedly, he swung between denial, defensive bluster, and emotional manipulation. Maddie's refusal to play the typical game of control left him vulnerable, helpless, and in visible disarray. Each foray to redirect discussions toward his desired narrative was foiled by Maddie's facts, boundaries, and unshakable calm. The public response to Kody's efforts to reassert control was no less interesting now. Fans saw the inconsistencies between his words and Maddie's confession right away. Commentary went wild on social media. Posts analyzed the language he used, interpreted body position in interviews, and compared past actions. The outcome: Kody's credibility was dented, but Maddie's command and integrity skyrocketed. And let's get real, this wasn't simply a matter of public opinion. Maddie's response made Kody face individual responsibility in ways he hadn't previously. He had counted on manipulating the family narrative and playing on loyalty to hold power for years. But Maddie's calculated revelation cut that umbilical cord. He could no longer dictate the narrative unchecked. And tellingly, Kody's reactions also exposed the emotional underpinnings of a man accustomed to grappling with authority being challenged. He tried to play on emotion, point to perceived motive, and present himself as victimized. But Maddie's serene, fact-checking style made those efforts blatant examples of narcissistic thought patterns and storytelling manipulation. Fans weren't fooled by smoke and mirrors, and the difference between the two stories couldn't possibly be more stark. Truthfully, the takeaway here is gigantic. Maddie's strength comes from her consistency, clarity, and braveness. Kody may post, clarify, and manipulate all he desires, but Maddie is armed with truth, boundaries, and responsibility. This is not merely a battle among family members. It is a realignment of the family system, where truth becomes more important than image, and accountability cannot be denied anymore. Now, we enter the richer ground, the long-term emotional and generational impact Maddie's disclosure has on the Brown family. This is not merely about one argument, one trending post, or one media storm. It is about the way truth, responsibility, and limits resonate across generations. Maddie's revelation of Robyn's deceptions and Kody's machinations compelled the family to re-examine their past, present, and future relationships. Children who spent their formative years seeing selective telling of facts suddenly had insight into events they didn't appreciate earlier. They were able to discern patterns of manipulation, preferential treatment, and dishonesty, which redeconstructed their perception of family dynamics. For the grown children, Maddie's bravery serves as a blueprint for healing. Siblings who hesitated about addressing prior abuses now have a map. Tell your truth, set boundaries, and guard your emotional health. Maddie's lesson is that you can take back your story without amplifying drama or becoming what you are rebelling against. Now let's consider the emotional toll. Exposure and honesty are never simple. Maddie's process meant coming face-to-face with long-held hurt, disillusionment, and exasperation. It meant reliving betrayal moments and working through complicated family dynamics. But the reward: empowerment, understanding, and a new sense of autonomy. And the effect doesn't end with the immediate family. Robyn's and Kody's efforts to keep control and manipulate impression now come under scrutiny, not only from family, but also from the public eye. This generation's accountability counts. Younger generations observe that gatekeeping, manipulation, and lying have repercussions, and they are gaining positive models for how to participate, set boundaries, and take care of themselves. A cultural impact is the additional layer. To audiences and fans, Maddie's narrative becomes more than reality television show drama. It is a roadmap for dealing with poisonous family dynamics, restoring truth, and prioritizing mental health and emotional safety. Each post, each public statement, and each confrontation is a teachable moment for the audience in recognizing patterns of manipulation and the value of holding firm. Ultimately, Maddie's actions are a turning point for legacy. She isn't only defending herself, she is defining how the next generation of the Brown family, and even viewers, understand accountability, integrity, and the strength of truth. Where compliance and silence used in tech to reign, boundaries, honesty, and courage are now taking center stage. That is why the story strikes such a chord. Maddie's battle isn't personal, it is generational, strategic, and transmutational. She is demonstrating that truth matters and responsibility reconfigures not just individual lives, but also family lives altogether. Okay, now let's talk about the fan response and viral energy. Because Maddie's secrets didn't just impact her family, they went off on social media and became a cultural phenomenon in the world of reality television. First, the initial reaction was charged. Maddie's clips, yelling out Robyn's lies, were shared thousands of times within hours. They made reaction videos, breakdowns dissecting each statement, and compilations dissecting all the drama. TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter exploded in hashtags such as #MaddieExposes, #FamilyTruths, and #BrownDrama. The news wasn't just popular, it was popularly dominating entertainment and lifestyle circles. What is interesting is how fans dissected every layer. Audiences weren't simply watching for fun, they were analyzing emotional tactics, responsibility, and the ultimate consequences of manipulation. Comment sections were filled with arguments. Did Robyn know she was selective storying? Did Kody ever try true reconciliation? How will the younger brothers and sisters react? Fans were amateur analysts, and Maddie's story framed the discussion. Another element was relatability. Most fans recognized similarities in their own lives. Coping with manipulative parents, managing sibling loyalty, or finding long-held family secrets. Maddie's strength resonated because it wasn't mere spectacle, it was empowering. She became a figure for standing up to truth, safeguarding children, and taking back personal power. And then there is the ripple effect of momentum. Each post Maddie posted created a ripple, inspiring response videos, memes, and in-depth coverage across several platforms. The dialogue did not wither from one clip. It remained active, continuing to evolve with new angles, statements, and fan observation. The exposure of Maddie became a living, dynamic narrative, with the fans actively involved in crafting the story's reach and influence. Notably, even the social media backlash amplified the pressure on Robyn and Kody. Every effort at explaining, defending, or downplaying was greeted with critical scrutiny. Public opinion was a mirror held up to the family's own dysfunction, reflecting it back at them. Maddie had managed to transfer power from public manipulation to public accountability, and the viral reaction reinforced her credibility and authority. Lastly, the enduring impact of this viral momentum is twofold. On the one hand, it solidifies Maddie as a voice of truth within the family. On the other hand, it reshapes how viewers, future reality television participants, and even casual audiences understand family dynamics and accountability. Social media isn't just a platform. It's a force multiplier, turning one woman's courage into a collective cultural conversation about honesty, boundaries, and the cost of lies. We've reached the conclusion of this explosive journey, and it's time to reflect on the big picture. Maddie Brown didn't simply reveal Robyn's deception. She upended the whole Brown family narrative. A personal family conflict that began amidst closed doors turned into a public reckoning, one of generational lessons and cultural dialogue first, the overall narrative. Maddie's narrative is one of truth over manipulation, accountability over control, and boundaries over compliance. She did not only stand up to lies, she methodically unraveled years of selective narrative, emotional manipulation, and public opinion management. Her strategy was strategic, methodical, and most importantly, human. Viewers could witness the juxtaposition of courage and control, honesty and lies, empowerment and compliance. Second, the takeaways are deep. For all families, Maddie's behavior is a model of how to navigate toxic dynamics, speak up for truth, silence may defend, but it also empowers manipulation. Speaking honestly and factually turns the tables. Shield your children and boundaries. Maddie's very first priority was guarding the next generation. Boundaries aren't merely rules, they're defenses against emotional harm. Accountability is important. Public shaming can feel histrionic, but it is sometimes the only means of applying accountability when manipulation has had free rein. Bravery sparks change. By taking a stand for herself, Maddie empowered siblings, fans, and even strangers to examine their own relationships and habits. Third, Maddie's enduring legacy is certain. She is not merely a reality television personality. She is a beacon of empowerment, responsibility, and integrity in the face of familial dishonesty. Her actions have far-reaching implications for the Brown family, impacting sibling relationships, public opinion, and even the next generation's grasp of honesty and personal autonomy. And lastly, let's not forget the emotional impact. Maddie's experience teaches us that fighting for truth is not without a price: emotional tension, public attention, and frayed relationships. But the reward is clarity, empowerment, and regaining control over your story. She demonstrates that truth is not always simple, but it is always potent. And so here is the lesson for viewers, and for the Brown family as well. Maddie's courage redefines legacy. rewrites the family story, and demonstrates that accountability, courage, and integrity can defeat decades of manipulation. Her confrontation with Robyn is not merely a tale, it is a guidebook for anyone dealing with toxic dynamics, asserting oneself, and defending what one holds dear. This is where the dust settles. Maddie Brown has spoken, truth has been uncovered, lies have been exposed. And the world, fans, family, and viewers alike are left to see a family forever transformed. Maddie didn't merely reveal Robyn's deception, she brought an end to the old way and began a new day where honesty, boundaries, and integrity take center stage. And that, my friends, is the real bombshell.